Have you ever wondered why the smarter you get, the lonelier you become? Why the more you understand, the harder it is to live? Schopenhauer once said, "The greatest achievements of the human mind are generally received with indifference." And human nature, fragile and vain as it is, never forgives that feeling. In a world that worships comfort and blind agreement, independent thinking becomes an act of public insult. You don't even have to speak. Your very presence is enough to be disliked. This isn't a video to glorify intelligence, nor to offer fake optimism. It's a dissection, honest, ruthless, of a dark truth. Being intelligent is a curse when you live among fools. If you've ever felt lost in empty conversations, if you've ever been quietly excluded because people just don't get you, then this video is for you. No flattery, no sugarcoating, only truth, raw, uncomfortable, and long overdue to be spoken. Intelligence, by its nature, isn't a light meant to illuminate others. It's a mirror, and mirrors are merciless. They don't flatter, they don't bend the truth to make anyone comfortable. They simply reflect, and that's precisely why people hate them. Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "To be hated without having said a word is the fate of the intelligent." You don't need to show off or say anything complex. Just your presence, calm, observant, unapologetically awake, is enough to make others feel threatened. Because your existence becomes an unspoken accusation against the lies they tell themselves every day. I used to think speaking the truth was an act of courage, but courage isn't always welcomed. Once, in a meeting, I pointed out what everyone could see but no one dared to mention. It wasn't criticism, it was truth, plain as daylight. The result? Cold silence, avoiding eyes, and a polite email saying thank you for your input. That's when I learned to stay silent, not out of fear, but understanding, because in this society, the crowd does not forgive those who see too clearly. As Schopenhauer wrote, talent hits a target no one else can hit, genius hits a target no one else can see, and when you see what others haven't yet noticed, you become a threat to the fragile order they cling to. Intelligence isn't admired, it's distrusted. Not because it's wrong, but because it reveals what people can't bear to face, the truth. Here's a harsher truth. People don't actually hate intelligence. They hate the feeling of being small when standing next to it. The better you are, the more you remind others of what they haven't achieved. You don't have to speak. You don't have to show off. Your very presence says enough. The difference is too visible, and that difference makes people uncomfortable. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you remind them of everything they're not. Schopenhauer once said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." Because when you live authentically, when you stop hiding your intelligence or strength, you unintentionally expose the masks others wear. They feel uneasy, empty, inferior. And when you stand out, in the way you speak, think, or achieve, your presence becomes a mirror that's too bright. It doesn't just reflect the truth, it burns. When they look at you, they don't really see you. They see what they lack. The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. So when you speak of something deep, they find it strange, complicated, unnecessary. But the truth is, you're just saying what everyone knows, only no one else dares to say it out loud. And then comes the label, arrogant, difficult, too much. Not because you think you're above them, but because they feel beneath you. You're not judging them, but they feel judged, and so they quietly push you out of the game. But the problem isn't just envy or comparison. It's worse. It's when you become invisible. You speak yet no one listens, not because they can't hear you, but because they don't want to understand. Try saying something deep at a casual gathering. Within seconds, the topic will slide back to the weather, football, or a new coffee shop someone just found. It's not that they hate you, you just make things uncomfortable. Schopenhauer called it a sad truth. The greatest achievements of the human mind are generally received with indifference. Society doesn't prioritize truth, it prioritizes comfort. People come together not to understand more, but to feel okay. So, when you speak with honesty or depth, you're not appreciated. You just kill the vibe. I used to crave being understood. I thought if I shared what I truly thought, someone would resonate, but instead it only made the room feel heavy. I don't blame them. No one enjoys being pulled out of their comfort zone. Sometimes, an honest question is scarier than a pleasant lie. Schopenhauer understood this early on, and he accepted it. To live alone is the fate of all great souls, not because they want to be apart, but because in the crowd, no one is really listening. And when you've grown used to being ignored every time you speak the truth, you eventually choose silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned truth isn't welcome. But there comes a point when you can't hold it in. You see something wrong, something off, something everyone else sees but pretends not to, and you speak up. That's when you become the virus. Critical thinking is like a grain of sand falling into a perfectly oiled machine. Tiny, quiet, but irritating enough to expose the flaw, enough to make the system see you as the problem. Schopenhauer once wrote, "The person who writes for fools is always sure of a large audience." That's how the world works. It doesn't need you to be intelligent. It needs you to stay quiet, blend in, and not cause trouble. Because if you start asking questions about structure, about purpose, about meaning, you expose how hollow the system really is. Smart people aren't easy to manipulate, and that's exactly why society prefers to get rid of them, quietly, not with violence, but with indifference, by withholding opportunity, by saying things like, "You're overthinking again." It's not that you don't fit in, it's that you see what they're trying to hide. The truth is, society doesn't fear intelligent people. It fears the truth intelligent people can see, and it will do everything it can to silence you before you make others start to open their eyes too. In the end, if you stay silent, you're ignored. If you speak, you're misunderstood. That's the paradox of intelligence. Speak and you're disliked. Stay quiet and you're forgotten. But there's a truth it took me years to realize. It's not that you're too different. It's that you haven't yet learned how to make others understand you. Schopenhauer once said, "Use common words to say uncommon things." Not everyone can keep up with your train of thought, not because they're stupid, but because they haven't lived what you've lived. If you speak like a scholar, they'll call you strange. If you reason too deeply, they'll say you're overcomplicating things. No one wants to be around someone who makes them feel dumb. That's why intelligent people must learn to translate their thoughts into words the majority can absorb. Otherwise, they'll be mistaken for showing off, acting superior, or trying too hard. I used to be that person. I spoke too much, too deeply, too earnestly, and thought, if they don't get it, that's their problem. Now I think differently. I've learned to speak less and simpler, not because I've become less intelligent, but because I want to connect more. Because in the end, intelligence isn't meant to separate us, it's meant to bring us closer, and that begins with how we speak. When you begin learning how to translate your thoughts to connect more easily, you also reach a deeper layer of intelligence, humility, and you'll realize something profound. True intelligence isn't about saying great things, but about listening to small ones. Schopenhauer once wrote, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." Meaning the smarter you are, the more you must remind yourself, you don't see everything. The person in front of you, whether uneducated, old, or clumsy, might see something you've never considered. I once met an old man in a tiny tea shop tucked away in an alley. He'd never been to college, didn't know how to use a smartphone, and couldn't care less about German philosophy or modern psychology. But the way he sat quietly, listening to me talk, without interrupting, without judging, made me realize something simple yet profound. Listening isn't a skill, it's a form of kindness no book can teach. From that day on, I understood something real. Humility doesn't make you less intelligent, it makes life easier. The deeper someone truly understands something, the less they feel the need to prove it. Because they know, knowledge isn't a medal to wear, it's a bridge to cross into someone else's world. You may see farther, think wider, but if you keep your head too high for too long, you'll forget that down here on the ground, everyone carries their own piece of understanding, and everyone has something to teach you. And when you've learned enough humility to listen, you start hearing something else, the voice within. Sadly, not everyone can hear it, because you're speaking a different language. Not higher, not harder, just a different frequency. Schopenhauer once said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." The price of awareness is loneliness. Because the higher the level of consciousness, the thinner the air becomes. You're not wrong, you're just standing at a height few people ever want to climb. I used to think something was wrong with me, that I was too sensitive, too complex, too different. But one day I met someone, just one person, in a small cafe during an ordinary conversation, and that person said exactly what I had been thinking for years, but never dared to say out loud. In that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. The lonely path of the intelligent isn't about changing the world. It's about finding your tribe, the ones who see, who feel, who hurt, just like you. You don't need the world to understand you. You just need a few people, deep enough, real enough, on the same frequency, to remind you that you belong. That's not the end, it's the beginning, where intelligence stops being a curse and becomes a small light that helps others see in the dark. If you've ever felt different, don't dim your light just because it blinds others. Don't force yourself to blend in. Find your people, the ones who are also lost, who've also stayed silent, who've also wondered if they're the only ones awake in a sleeping world. Walk together, and you'll see, intelligence isn't a burden when you learn how to carry it the right way. Nietzsche once warned, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster." The price of clarity is loneliness, but the reward is truth, and perhaps that's still worth it. If you saw yourself in this video, save it, or send it to someone who might understand. And if you want to keep exploring thoughts like these, subscribe, because there's still so much left for us to face together.